Present.
Here.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes, ma'am.
have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I would like to first, with regard to our agenda, excuse me. Thank you. I would like to ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please be seated. This is our first official meeting of the 2022 year. And I would like, for everyone's benefit, to have the members of our board introduce themselves. And Paul, would you start?
Dr. Harris.
Oh, ma'am.
Yeah, we have that. The next thing, oh, I'm sorry. Well, right.
I am right?
Yes, always.
Okay. Paul, would you please introduce yourself, state a little bit about your background, and also what position you occupy, whether it's a member at large or some other position?
Paul Kaplan, Cap Construction, Inc., general contractor for 25 years. And I'm currently, I don't know what my status is currently on the board.
Oh, okay. Well, you would be our, what, construction or our official contractor?
Yes, he represents the construction industry.
Very good. And I might note that there are 3 required positions. One of them is a professional engineer. Another, like Paul, is an experienced construction contractor in the area. And the third is a legal member. So next, please, Yvonne.
My name's Yvonne Downs. I have well over 30 years of experience working in the environmental field. I have a master's of science in environmental management. I worked at the Hawthorne Army Depot for almost 20 years doing working with Title V, asbestos, lead, and a wide variety of other air requirements.
Lee.
Hi, my name is Lee Squire. I'm the owner operator of ABL Chimney Sweep. I've been doing that for well over 3 decades. I see air pollution in up close and personal manner.
And Lee, isn't this about your 7th year on the board?
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, as am I. All right, my name is Richard Harris. I'm the legal member of the Air Quality Advisory Board. I have 46 years of experience in natural resource and environmental law. I have 2 law degrees from Stanford and a PhD in environmental policy from UNR. Next.
Phil Schweber, I'm a at-large member. This is my first meeting on this board. I'm a retired finance healthcare person, and in a previous life served in Missoula, Montana on both the health board and the air pollution control board in that community.
Tony?
My name's Tony Dimple. I'm the PE on the board. I have 10 years of environmental consulting experience. I'm currently the vice president of McGinley & Associates, an environmental firm here in town. I'm also the Northern Nevada area director for another firm called Universal Engineering Sciences. And our firm practices quite a bit of air quality consulting.
Thank you very much, lady and gentlemen. And we now have on our agenda an opportunity for any public comment. Any person is invited to speak on any item on or off the agenda during this period. Action may not be taken on any matter raised during this public comment period until the matter is specifically listed on an agenda as an action item.
I have not received any cards.
All right, and I call upon the folks here with us today. Are there any persons wishing to offer a public comment? Hearing none, I would next like to move on to item 5 on the agenda, the nominations and election of a chairman for the Air Pollution Control Hearing Board. All of our members are eligible for this position, and I would ask if there were any nominations.
I, sir, would nominate you.
Thank you very much.
It seems a natural fit.
Well, Mr. Squire has recommended that I serve as chair. Are there any other nominations?
I would second that nomination.
Oh, how kind of you. Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? I hear none. May I hear whether there are ayes in favor of this nomination? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Okay. Next, we have on our agenda the nomination and election of a vice chairman of our board. And have I any nominations from our membership?
I would think Yvonne.
Yvonne, do you wish to be vice chair?
Oh,
We can make you vice chair. Would you accept that?
I will accept that.
All right.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Caught me off guard.
May I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
I,
Aye. All right, Yvonne, you are duly elected vice chair. And now we have before us, I hope you've all received it. Oh, well, yes, ma'am. Of course, dear.
Thank you.
All right. At the beginning of each meeting, I am requested to read this to you. The Air Pollution Control Hearing Board has been established pursuant to section 120025 of the Washoe County District Board of Health Regulations governing air quality management. And also section 0200251 authorizes its jurisdiction in hearing appeals from any aggrieved person. This board is comprised of volunteers appointed by the District Board of Health who meet the qualifications required in section 020025. Appeals heard today, February 6, 2020, will be forwarded to the District Board of Health with a recommendation as set forth in section 0.200251 subpart D and will be reviewed as an upcoming regularly scheduled meeting. At the discretion of the District Board of Health, all appellants may provide further testimony regarding their case at that time. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, following our decisions regarding the 3 appeals on schedule this evening, you have a further opportunity for appeal and an opportunity to make a new case before the District Board of Health. All right. I have before me, and I hope you as well, the agenda, notice and agenda for our February 16 meeting. Do I hear any changes or additions regarding the agenda? And hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
You may.
And I would second that.
Okay,
Sorry.
you're saying yes?
Yes.
And you're saying you're second.
Yes, sir.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we have the minutes of July 13, 2021, which have been provided to the members of the board. Do I hear any questions, comments, or amendments to those minutes? Hearing none, I would request a motion to approve the minutes of July 13, 2021.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get the hang of it, man.
Yes, Mr. Squires,
And I
And-
second.
and yes. Yvonne. So, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? No. Okay. Now, we proceed next to the first of the 3 hearings scheduled for this evening. This is a recommendation of the staff to hold a notice of violation relating to Sun State Equipment Rental Company appeal to our Air Pollution Control Hearing Board. Now, yes, ma'am.
Offering testimony. Would you please stand tonight? Raise your right hand.
And by the way, these are all members.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate.
Thank you. And may staff proceed to its presentation. Please go ahead. And state your name and your position.
For the record, Joshua Ristori, Supervisor of Permanent Compliance for the Air Quality Management Division. Thank you for joining us tonight, Chairman Harris and members of the board. I would like to present for you basically a summary of what was already presented to you in a staff report packet with attachments that you received prior to this meeting. I'm going to go specifically through this case as to the violations that occurred. So hopefully you've had the time to review those documents prior to this meeting. So with that, I'd like to discuss case number 1325, violation number AQMV 21-0047 issued to Sun State Equipment Rental. The topics of discussion for this case. First, I'd like to discuss our authority as the Air Quality Management Division, any important definitions and concepts associated with this case, the events associated with this case that led to a notice of violation, and then ultimately the notice of violation itself. So let's discuss Washoe County Air Quality Management Division's authority. So our authority is gained from the District Board of Health regulations governing air quality management, specifically section 040080, gasoline transfer and dispensing facilities. Something very important to realize is that part of this regulation and the purpose of this regulation is to control and reduce emissions of volatile organic compounds from the sale and distribution of gasoline. It applies to all gasoline dispensing and storage facilities within Washoe County. There are exemptions, but those are found in this rule. The gasoline dispensing facility at Sun State is one of those facilities that is not exempt from this. Next, into the regulation itself, in 040080, section C1, we have a section regarding phase one vapor recovery. And this is in regards to gasoline transfer into stationary storage containers themselves. In that portion of the regulation, it states that the vapor control equipment at the facility shall be maintained in such a way that vapor control systems meet the specifications set forth in the section at all times. Meaning that if there are requirements of that system to control vapors, they need to be maintained accordingly. That's either by the maintenance of that equipment or even just the use of that equipment. It needs to be used correctly as well. Within that regulation also, it very clearly states that phase one vapor recovery system shall have a pocketed dry brake on the vapor return, which I'll go into in some subsequent slides here. So important definitions and concepts. I wanted to provide you with a diagram of a simple diagram of a above ground storage tank. And I'll walk over here to kind of exemplify, the different parts of this system. So this is what we would consider a phase one vapor recovery system. It has a couple components, and again, this is a very simplified version, but you have a portion of the vapor control system where you are going to be distributing gasoline into the tank. That drop tube needs to essentially be within a certain distance of the bottom of the tank, so that if you took the cap off of that, your vapors would only be essentially the surface area of the pipe itself, if that makes sense. So the seal itself would be the gasoline because the pipe's sitting in gas. The rest of the tank, you would have vapor space, and then you would have a vapor recovery adapter associated with the tank. And that is where you're going to find the pocketed valve, the vapor recovery pocketed valve. The intention here is that when a fueler is coming to fill up one of these tanks, the first thing they're going to do is pull their hose out for vapor recovery, which is a different size hose than they would use for distributing gasoline to the tank. They would place the hose on the pocketed dry brake, which would allow any pressure inside the tank and any vapors to travel back to their truck, which then they would take back to typically the tank farm like we have in Sparks, and those vapors would be combusted in the vapor combustion unit. So it's kind of a, I don't want to call it a sealed system, but it's a self-contained system. The utilization of that pocketed dry brake is extremely important in controlling emissions, both when the tank is sitting idle, but also when the tank is having gasoline distributed to it. And then ultimately at the end, you have a vent with a pressure vacuum release valve in case you have extreme amounts of vacuum in the tank or extreme amounts of pressure in the tank. It's a safety mechanism essentially. But again, its purpose is to keep those vapors in the tank up to either those vacuum pressures or those positive pressures. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay. And so here's a diagram of a pocketed dry brake vapor adapter. And again, this is an adapter that you're going to connect the hose to. That those vapors are going to travel back to the tanker truck and then be taken back to the tank farm for vapor destruction. And essentially what you're looking at is it's a spring-loaded internal cap. So it has a rubber seal around it. And as you put your vapor adapter from your hose on there, it depresses the seal, it depresses the spring, allowing for those vapors to travel into that hose only when that adapter is in place. There's a requirement of a secondary seal, which is the cap that you see, that orange cap that you see on top, in case there are minor, say, abrasions or tears in the rubber seal associated with that vapor pocket. So next, I want to discuss the events of case number 1325. So on June 1st, 2021, the AQMD went out for a routine inspection at or at Sun State. And the vapor poppet valve was wedged open with a wire. This is a unannounced inspection. So, we're contacting whomever at the facility to do this inspection, to go out to look at the equipment that's permitted at this facility. The vapor adapter cap, as I showed you in that one image, was not in place on the vapor adapter. It was actually sitting on top of the gas tank. The wire was removed by the appellant during the evaluation, during the air quality evaluation, and the cap was placed on the vapor adapter. So things were corrected at that time. But I can tell you from our experience at air quality, the reason that we typically see things like this are because delivery drivers either are not showing up with the correct equipment to collect vapors, or they're not showing up with a hose, or quite frankly, it can be due to laziness. And so they will jam something in there to allow those vapors to escape as they're filling the tank. That makes sense. I'm not saying that is the reason that that wire was in there, but that is a common action that we do see is a foreign object being shoved into that vapor adapter to allow those vapors to escape from the atmosphere. Something very critical to us right now is the containment of VOCs. We are on a threshold or even exceeding the federal standard for ground level ozone, which VOCs can help contribute to, especially in those summertime months when we have extreme heat, extreme sun. So capturing VOCs, destroying VOCs is extremely important to our airshed. It's extremely important to the Air Quality Management Division, and we don't take it lightly. Next, please. And so here you can see a picture of what was discovered during the inspection. You have the poppeted dry brake with the wire inserted to basically break that seal, and the cap sitting off because you can't obviously install a cap with a wire sitting there. And again, the purpose of the poppeted dry brake is a primary seal. The purpose of the cap is a secondary seal. So going on to the notice of violation, AQMV 21-0047. The violation: was the appellant maintaining and operating their phase 1 control equipment consistent in such a manner that prevents the release of vapors to the atmosphere pursuant to section C1 standards for gasoline transfer into stationary storage containers? The answer to that is no. Is this a violation of District Board of Health regulations? The answer to that is yes. Something that I also like to state is that we issued a minor violation. It's a minor violation per District Board of Health rules at $1,000 for this violation. He felt that it was egregious enough that it definitely warranted a violation, not a warning, not a fix-it ticket, because there were potentially release of vapors there. We inspect these facilities once a year. That's what our capacity is to inspect them once a year. How long that was in that place, we don't know. So we would recommend to the board to uphold the violation and uphold the penalty associated with this violation. And with that, I will take any questions.
Members of the board, any questions?
So you go once a year unannounced to checking these things,
Correct.
and this is for gas?
This is for gasoline
Fuel.
vapors, correct. We have a section of our regulations associated specifically to the containment of gasoline vapors as stated in the purpose of our regulation.
As an automobile petrol,
As an automobile petrol.
highly explosive flammable automobile petrol. Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
The equipment was all in operating condition and not damaged, correct?
Correct.
Is there any compliance history with this facility or other facilities that Sun State operates?
Not to my knowledge.
Have all previous inspections have been given the green light and all good, no other issues?
But this looked like an intentional use.
Based on our, like I said, based on our experience seeing things like this, it appeared to be intentional.
Okay.
Sir, you had also mentioned that it typically comes from the delivery trucks because they don't have the proper piping. Is that correct?
Like I said, it can be proper piping, proper adapter. they don't bring the proper adapter with the piping. It can also be, I don't want to pull the hose out to collect the vapors. There are some philosophies that you can fill a tank faster when you're not recovering vapors because you can wedge that valve open. There's a number of reasons as to why we've seen this happen.
Thank you.
So then would it be completely hypothetical to assume that if the truck didn't have it, wouldn't it be part and parcel for that unit to be part of that operation there as a standard procedure?
I would assume, depending on who they hire as a vendor to deliver.
Okay.
Do we know how often fuel was being delivered or when the most recent delivery was?
I don't have that information.
You do?
I can answer that.
All right.
Actually, I have one more question on the penalty matrix.
Yes, sir.
For compliance history, if the fine were to be from 1,000 be reduced as far down as 0, and there was a similar violation in the future, does it still show up in that compliance history as a multiplier?
The violation, if the violation was upheld, that is separate from the penalty now.
Okay.
So if the violation is upheld, yes, that would still go towards their compliance history.
Okay.
Sir, I understand personally that the owner and operator of the tanks are required to be there when the tanks are being filled. Do you know if that was the case in this particular instance?
I do not, you would have to ask Sun State what their policy or procedure is.
Thank you.
Members of the board, have you any other questions for Mr. Ristori?
For Mr. Ristori? No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Ristori, thank you very much for your presentation. I would now like to call upon a representative of Sun State Equipment Rental Company to come forward. And sir, would you please state your name and spell your name?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Chairman Harris, Vice Chairman Downs, members of the board. Mr. Story. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Eric Fisher. I'm the branch manager of Sun State Equipment on South Rock Boulevard in Reno. Forgive me, a little nervous. I have a statement I could read, or we could just simply go into questions. Whatever convenient. Yes.
You are welcome to make your statement. That would advise us of your position, please. So go ahead.
I will read our statement. And first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Story for outlining the incident that he explained everything what happened, so that was pretty clear on that end. So I can answer any questions pertaining to what you may feel we need to discuss around it. But let me read my statement. Thank you. Dear committee, council members, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to affirm Sun State's commitment to the community and environment. Sun State has operated for over 40 years, now in almost 25 states from coast to coast. As a company, we take our ecological responsibility to heart. This includes a division devoted to compliance and forward thinking in regards to reducing our carbon footprint and maintaining a clean operation. Locally, we have been in business for over 7 years with not a single blemish on our record until the inspection June 2nd, 2020. The issue, the open valve, was immediately identified and rectified that same day. While we were not the cause of the issue, we take responsibility for it. And we put in place procedures to ensure that this never happens again. We have made it a point to inspect our fuel tanks on a daily basis, my staff reporting back to me both if all clear or if there is a discrepancy or problem. This has become almost a muscle memory in myself and my staff to go and look at those tanks now. Let me emphasize that as a result of this incident, our company has nationally revised our hazard identification reporting format to reflect that this sort of inspection is done throughout the Sunstate family of branches and operations consistently. We hope to appeal to this board to consider amending our fine in reflection for the speed and thoroughness of our response. We take our responsibility seriously, not only as a local branch, but as a national company. We do not dispute the infraction. We believe that we have proven our ability to respond and ensure that this never happens. Please allow us to confirm our deep commitment as willing and enthusiastic civic partners to our local, county, and state governments in preserving our trucking network. Thank you for your consideration and attention. And I am be glad to answer any questions.
I have a very specific question to this. If you guys are that concerned about it and everything like that, is this something that you keep a running log of? Did everybody that inspects it logs in times in days that it's done?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
you,
sir. All our fuel logs are logged and they come every Thursday weekly to put in the diesel, which is a weekly. The gasoline, to answer, asked Mr. Schweber earlier, we get gasoline about every 70 to 80 days. It's not very often for us. The gasoline is very rare for us.
and
We don't
what,
do a lot of gasoline.
what specific location is this?
750 South Rock
Which is,
in Reno.
the name of the location.
Oh, Sun State Equipment. And you mean the fuel company?
Yeah,
Oh, the fuel company is Golden Gate Petroleum.
that's what I wanted to know.
Yes, sir.
There are questions for Mr. Fisher.
What was the most recent gasoline delivery prior to the inspection?
The week before. The fuel was actually delivered on May the 26th. And that day I checked with the fuel company, asked them if they could remember what happened that day after the infraction. They came into our site at approximately 4:30 p.m. that day. The driver had been on duty since 4 o'clock in the morning, fueling. He had been almost 12 hours. When I spoke to the owner, he thought that along what Mr. Ristori said, that the driver was wiped out, tired, and just wanted to get it done, get home. We have no reason to touch that valve ever. It just simply does not factor into it. We have a regular nozzle dispenser for gasoline, like you see at the gas station. That valve has never enters into our mind until after the fact that we would ever have to mess with it or touch it whatsoever. So it definitely, like I said, it would have, but we didn't notice it. We didn't catch it on our inspections, our weekly inspections, which actually came the next day.
So it's not something your employees there mess with?
Not at the time, sir, but no.
Okay.
Have you taken any corrective action with regard to your supplier?
We discussed that both with myself and my management team, and when we spoke to the owner of Golden Gate, he assured us that would never happen again. The next 2 deliveries of gasoline that he had come, I personally supervised the installation. I watched him hook up his return hose from that valve, and ever since then, it's only been maybe half a dozen gasoline deliveries, and I usually have one of either myself or my yard guy watches.
If there's somebody there every single time somebody delivers gas.
If the gasoline is coming, yes, sir.
Okay. I can particularly understand being tired after a long day and everything, but I know from a personal fact, if I'm tired and I screw up, somebody else pays the price.
I understand. Thank you. We said we thought about it, but they offered an apology to us. They even offered to pay the fine. I said, we'll get to that point when this is all resolved. They're still our partners to us. We have a national agreement with them. They've been loyal, good suppliers to us for many years. This is the first time this has ever happened.
I get all that, and people do get tired.
And the family.
So
Yeah.
I've got a question. You had made a statement about daily inspections are now happening. In my little brain, that sounds like they were not happening previously. But in my experience, when you're dealing with fuel stations, you have weekly, monthly, daily and annual inspections for your DF2 and MoGas. So why wasn't the daily inspections happening prior to this?
It's a some state policy is that we do a hazard inspection weekly. That has always been our company policy. My personal, every day, when I walk my yard, every day, I always pass by the fuel tanks and I'm looking for cleanliness, I'm looking for debris, I'm looking, make sure that the compliance signs are on there. To look at that valve, I'll be honest with you, it just simply never popped into my head to look at that valve. I mean, because it's something that doesn't factor into our operations. So to answer your question, it just, honestly, we just had no reason to look at that valve. We always are touching the tanks or looking at the tanks every day. We do an official form, and I can show you that form. We have formed this, which is our weekly hazardous checklist.
Can I see
And the
that?
thing, yes, thank you. And I want to make note of the highlighted portion in the middle was the section that was amended after this on a national level to all of our branches, coast to coast.
It's in the packet as well.
Thank you.
So it was just kind of fortuitous, I guess is a word to use, that roughly a week after the tank was filled, the inspector did their random inspection. Had that random inspection occurred a month later, they probably would have seen the same thing, because just walk by the valve and never look at it.
I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that.
I do kind of want to get a clear picture of this. There's a rubber grommet that goes around that to seal it. There was a metal ring that goes by that. And then between the grommet and the metal was a piece of metal
Piece of U-shaped wire about 4 inches long, bent
With-
up like that.
with a highly volatile vapor. Metal on metal.
Sir, so what they do is with your fingers, you can actually push that poppet valve in. You can just push it in and it'll open up.
Yeah, I actually think I've
You
seen
insert
one.
the wire there.
Not good.
And also left the cap up. There's a cap that goes over top of it to seal the whole thing. And that was also on the side the valve.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes, sir.
it seems quite evident that there was a violation. Why are you here on appeal?
We're here to hope that we could show that on our side, our immediate response, with that there would be some reflection about the fine. We do take responsibility for it. We should have caught it, yes. As Chairman Brown said, Vice Chair, we should, these tanks should be inspected daily, everything. And we do that. They weren't done. But so we're just asking for some consideration of the fine. We feel that, yes, we didn't cause the incident, but we will take responsibility for it.
All right. Members of the board, have you any other questions of Mr. Fisher?
I think I'm good.
Then I will bring our discussion back to the members of the board. Does anybody have any commentary on what we have heard from Mr. Ristori and Mr. Fisher? I would remind you that we have 3 options before us. One is to uphold the violation and the proposed fine of $1,000. Another is to dismiss the violation, imposing no fine. And the third is to uphold the violation with a lesser fine. Does anyone have a motion?
I have a short statement and something like this.
Do please.
In our region, we're very aware of what fire can do, and I see it personally on a daily basis of what people's inactivity and neglect can do to a single family or an entire community. I think this is extremely bad. I would recommend we uphold the $1,000 fine.
Would you make that as a motion?
I so motion.
Very good. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Can I have a question? Can I no longer comment
Please.
once we have a motion? Again, it's my first time.
Go ahead.
I just have a differing view. in my opinion, the violation, it should be upheld. It's done its job and precipitated corrective action. Should we reduce the fine amount? It doesn't completely go away because should this violation be discovered in the future, there's a multiplier effect on a subsequent violation. So even if the violation is reduced by some or to zero, it doesn't completely go away if it happens again and any time, I think in perpetuity, or excuse me, in the next 5 years, I believe, then it would hit them at that time.
Exactly.
So I feel like it precipitated the appropriate action. They jumped on it. They changed things nationally, and I in my opinion, it's the violation on its own, regardless of the fine, has done it's met its purpose. And so I feel like a consideration for a reduction in the fine is warranted.
Do you move to amend the motion to impose a fine of $1,000?
Yes.
All right. A motion has been-
Dr. Harris,
Yes.
I think we should vote on just vote on the first motion, or if there is a second, and then if we need a second motion, we can do that.
All right.
Just to be clear.
All right then. Bearing in mind that Mr. Dimple has a proposed amendment, but we do have a motion made and seconded.
We didn't have a second on it.
Oh, yes, we did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Schwaber. So with regard to that motion made and seconded to uphold the notice of violation and the fine of $1,000, may I ask if those in favor of that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have what, three in favor and three not. So may I hear those who oppose the motion, please say nay.
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 No. Okay, so we are met with a 3-3 vote. And so now let us proceed to Mr. Dimple's proposed amendment, or in fact, a new motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
you can vote in this situation. And if that breaks the tie.
I did vote.
Okay, thank you.
I did vote. It was 3 and 3.
So I would go ahead and second, I'm sorry, Tony, God, horrible.
Yeah.
Tony's amendment to it, if say, cut the fine down to $500, I think there should be something here.
So is that your motion, Mr. Dimple, that the fine be reduced? And would you state a number as part of your motion?
Yeah. Tell me if I'm messing up the language. I would move to uphold the violation, but reduce the fine to $0.
And I would second that.
Right? We have a motion duly seconded to uphold the violation and reduce the fine to $0. May I hear a vote of the members? As those who uphold this, please say aye.
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 2. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So the motion advanced by Mr. Dimple is rejected by a vote of 4-2. Does anyone have an alternate motion to make?
As I said, I would propose possibly a $500 fine.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I second.
Okay, and a second. Those in favor of upholding the violation with a reduced fine of $500, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So done. Thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. We appreciate your appearance.
Thank you very much, members of the board. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We next have our second appeal. Dealing with a violation number 0049. Suggesting an administrative fine of $1,000 to Q&D Construction regarding a dust, not maintaining a copy of a dust control permit. Mr. Ristori, are you speaking on this?
I need to let everybody know that Q&D is a current client of the company in which I'm the vice president of, and we have provided professional services at this location. So I believe I'll have to recuse myself.
Are you recusing?
Yeah.
All right. Note, please, Mr. Dimpola is recusing himself from a vote on this matter. Mr. Ristori.
And I'm
please
sorry
proceed.
I'm sorry to interrupt. He should recuse himself for the vote and any deliberations and discussions as well, just for the record. Thanks.
Chairman Harris, members of the board, for the record, Joshua Ristori, Supervisor Air Quality Management Division in Permitting and Compliance. What I have to present for you for case number 1321, specifically 0049 violation, is in regards to Q&D Construction and the Flying J Inc. project at Raw Drive and I-80. So with this case, what I'd like to discuss is, again, our authority here, important definitions and concepts, events that evolved to bring us to this violation, and then notice of violation AQMV 21-0049 itself. So looking at our authority. The Washoe County District Board of Health regulations governing air quality management, section 040030 specifically involves dust control. The purpose of this regulation is to limit particulate matter getting into the air. Primarily, we're talking about particulate matter size PM10, or 10 microns and less. And we're trying to control it from a result of the impact of human activities. So with this regulation, that's essentially, the goal of providing dust control permits, providing conditional requirements, standards, et cetera, found within this dust control regulation. Specifically in DVOH regulation 040030, section E2A, which involves record keeping, it states the dust control permit shall be kept on the specific job site and made available to the control officer immediately upon request. And I think focus on the word immediately. This isn't within a day. This isn't, well, they're back at my office. They're in a pickup truck driving around. It needs to be on site. That's specifically what it says in the regulation. So important definitions and concepts. So 040030 section C3 is in regards to dust control permitting requirements. And there's elements of a dust control permit. And those elements, they describe the control measures to be implemented at the project site. And they are to be used weekends, after hours, like I like to say, before, during, and after construction, to keep the dirt where it belongs, especially during activities such as construction, which is on the ground, not in the air. And the dust control permit serves as a guide for those that apply for it. It's a contract between the Air Quality Management Division and those that are obtaining a permit from us. It's a guide to show them how to stay in compliance. It's essentially a reflection of our regulations, which is why it's so critical that it remain on site. If someone has a question as to, is this a violation or not? Or how do I respond to this certain condition? They can refer to their dust control permit. So it is, again, that contract that keeps them in compliance with the regulation. So next, I'd like to discuss the events of case number 1325. And I'm going to give you a few aerial pictures here The first one being sort of a regional picture of where this project is. It's at the intersection of Robb Drive and Interstate 80 West. If you've been in that area, you can probably see the stockpiles of rock, et cetera, in that area. And the next one is a caption of the permitted acreage that Q&D, or the appellant, I should say, pulled their permit for, 29.7 acres on that parcel. So not the whole parcel. Next, I'd like to show you a video. Before we play the video, I want to explain that the reason that we issued this violation is because of what you're going to see in this video. We had an inspector out on site doing a routine inspection, as we do with any dust control site, unpermitted or unscheduled inspection. And we found that they were in violation of the fugitive dust standard within the regulation, which we also issued a violation for that is not being appealed at this hearing. When we find issues on site that are violating the standards found within the dust control regulation, we're going to look for other areas where there's non-compliance, especially in the record keeping. Because if someone's not aware of the dust control that they should be performing, there might be a good indication that maybe they're not keeping the correct dust logs, or they don't have their dust control permit on site. So I would like for you to watch the video, which really led us to issuing 3 different violations for this case. So going into the events that led up to this violation, on June 1st, 2021, we were conducting a routine inspection of the Flying J project. Fugitive dust was observed in violation of the standard set forth in 040030. And the air quality specialist completed a compliance evaluation, a full compliance evaluation of the site, and found that the dust control permit was not being kept at the project, which is a violation of our regulations, which we'll go into the next slides. So, did the appellant maintain their dust control permit on the specific job site, as it says in the regulation, and provide the permit to the control officer or the inspector or the delegate of the control officer immediately upon request pursuant to the section for record keeping? The answer to that is no. I will point out too that it's also a conditional requirement in that permit that the permit is to remain on site. So again, it's that contract that lets you know how to stay in compliance. Is this a violation of county and/or federal regulations? Yes, it is. That I will field any questions.
Members of the board, any questions?
Sir, did they have a permit?
They absolutely do have a permit. They still currently have a permit. Yes.
Thank you.
It just wasn't directly on site?
Correct.
Other questions? Other comments?
I have a question. Is that the only video you have of the violation? And because that was kind of a short video. Is there more videos of other violations, or is that it?
I have another violation. I believe it's about 15 minutes long. But the requirement of the standard set forth in 040030 is 5 minutes in any 1 hour using an EPA method 22 analysis, which is where an inspector can go out. They do a visual of fugitive dust. If they can observe fugitive dust in excess of 5 minutes in any 1 hour, that's a violation of the standards set forth in that regulation. So the video helps support the method 22 observation, but it's not a requirement. But to answer your question, yes, we do have a longer video. I held back on using that video because it's about 15 minutes long. If you would like to watch that, we can watch that.
Well, the reason I was asking is because there's, intermediate times for these water trucks to move in and out. And so, you know, if you catch it just right, you know, you can catch that. And, you know, I understand the challenges right now with labor force and skilled labor force. And so I could see how intermittently you could miss in some timeframes. If you're telling me there's a 15-minute duration, you know, that's a little bit different than, let's say, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And so that's what I'm leading to here. I mean, Q&D is, you know, well operating machine here. So just interesting how that video was just a short clip. That was my question.
And really, the video was to demonstrate that, again, if it were an issue where the site was completely saturated, we didn't see any fugitive dust emissions, but we asked for the dust control permit and it wasn't there, we might give them a warning. Hey, next time have your permit here. But when you see an actual effect on air quality, we're going to look for other violations there that might have led up to that, which one would be not having your dust control permit on site. And again, another would be not maintaining your daily logs to demonstrate that you are controlling dust.
So this is a compilation of cause and effect.
Correct.
And Mr. Ristori, I believe you have testified that there was a notice of violation given with regard to the dust emissions, and that has not been appealed.
That is correct. If you look at the appeal itself, it is in regards to the 2 record-keeping violations that were written.
All right. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Ristori?
I do have one, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not. Because I do know that this is a federal and state requirement for those records to be on site. And the county has to meet minimum the state requirement and minimum the federal requirement, but can exceed those requirements. And it sounds to me that you're just meeting the minimum of the state and federal requirement for the record keeping of having that permit on site.
That is correct. Without going into the complications of the regulation, that regulation is part of our state implementation plan
Mhm.
for staying in compliance with PM10, which we were
Thank
in
you.
exceedance for. So you're correct in that it is part of the CFR now, so it is a federal regulation. And that is the minimum requirement, that it stays on site. I think, is that what you're?
That is exactly where I was going, making sure that the county is in fact following what the federal and state regulations
Yes.
impose.
That is a regulation that was put in place to, again, bring ourselves back into attainment for PM10 emissions here locally.
For the same.
And it was approved, reviewed and approved by the EPA, and that's why it's in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Anything further of Mr. Ristori? Mr. Ristori, thank you very much. May we hear from a representative of Q&D Construction? And sir, you are under oath. Would you please state your name and spell your last name?
For the record, Jeff Bean, Vice President, Q&D Construction, last name B-E-A-N.
Mr. Bean, you may proceed.
We apologize. We may not be as prepared as we should have been. We didn't realize the formality of the setting today, but we'll do our best. I've got Shannon with me. He's kind of day-to-day responsibility. So if we get into nitty-gritty details, I'll turn it over to Shannon. We aren't saying that we're doing our absolute best on that day on that site. Obviously, from the video, to your point, it was short, but I've seen the whole video. It was representative. We didn't appeal that part of it. We're a very mobile company. We don't typically set up job site trailers. We try to run out of our pickups for the most part because our foremen move jobs on a really consistent basis. As part of that, the logs and permit and all the documentation is generally in the foreman's pickup. In this instance, we had recently changed from one foreman to another,
And the first foreman had dropped the logbook off at the office and hadn't been taken back out to the field. And so it's, in our mind, well, probably technically a violation, essentially a clerical mistake, and we're asking for some leniency, I suppose. Happy to take any questions.
Do you make multiple copies?
They have to be, there's logs that go with it, so. We are trying to find a better way to do this. You would think that with cloud-based systems and databases, that somebody out there would offer something that our foreman could have on their iPad, and it would essentially be a living document.
Yeah, but
No, I don't-
if
I don't know.
today's any proof, that's not always a good option, because
And I don't know if
everything
we
was down today.
If we figure it out, we still have to come back to staff, and there's other environmental permits and other requirements that we have the same issue with. And so we haven't found the perfect solution for that. So at this point, we're still stuck with the paper document and the transition of it. The second challenge is, the paper document bounces around the trucks and,
Yeah. Yes,
it's not always really representative of,
not optimum.
so.
Sir, what do you do with your SDSs?
SDSs are online. There is a company that offers SDS sheets,
So that you're able to pull them up automatically with your tablet?
and so they upload just like an app would, or they update just the same as an app would. And so if a crew is outside of cell service, they have the most current from the last time it updated. So, theoretically, there's a chance that maybe one sheet didn't make it in there that was updated, but for the most part, they have 99.99% current SDS sheets. And if they're working in town, they would always have current.
So whether or not basically cloud-based or anything like that, you can always keep it as a PDF, right?
But we'd have the same challenge of going with that one. So that when someone took it iPad, if it's not cloud-based, app-based, it follows that foreman's iPad.
So where I was going with the SDSs is because it has the same requirement that you have to keep it in your vehicle regardless of where you're at. So true of this. So from my experience, my companies, we always kept it behind the seat along with our logs of the trucks that we were driving around in. So prior to the pads or tablets, how did you keep all those records?
Same as you did, but,
Okay.
then, we have, probably 70 foremen, so the distribution of every time you get a new SDS gets to be a challenge, so the database online is a lot more current and accurate.
For the record, Ms. Downs, would you please explain what an SDS is?
It's a safety data sheet, otherwise, or used to be known as a material data sheet.
Okay. Yep, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. Your statement about 70 foremen and I'm assuming various shifts, and you realize these specific requirements. In my little wee brain, if you're forgetting your paperwork with a foreman, how often would that occur? Because you have 70 of them traveling through.
That's 70.
Foreman.
That's between South Dakota, Victorville, South
Oh.
Carolina. So not.
My mistake. Thank you.
Site, on any site. A foreman is assigned responsibility for SWIFT and pest control compliance.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Then along with that thought, how many foremen would you have in the area here that you're working that covers these particular parameters?
This site or?
No, this area, how many foremen do you have in this area that this would pertain to? Jeez.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You could always put it all on paper and give them a personal hand truck.
I mean, for the most part, if there's overlap, if a pipe foreman starts the job and he's turning it over to a grading foreman as he leaves and there's a week overlap, they transition and it works well, but you get into these situations where Foreman A leaves on Friday and Foreman B comes in on Monday. And Foreman A takes it with him and he's out, you know, so I mean,
Could
it's a challenge we have to take care of. This is.
and you
100% our
don't,
responsibility.
you don't set up portable offices or,
Some sites
Sometimes.
will, I mean, you know, like the spaghetti bowl, larger sites.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a 4 or 5 person crew, it typically doesn't necessitate an office.
I see you guys all over town and you're usually on your stuff.
So I'm sorry, I have another question in that. Rats, I just forgot it.
So, Mr. Bean, this is clearly a violation, as in the next one on the dust control log. What do you propose to do about this problem?
Yeah, how do you fix it?
How do you fix it?
So our long-term solution is to find a cloud-based system. It's because it just solves some problems. We haven't found one commercially available, and then we've run some test pilot programs trying to do some stuff internally, and we're contractors, not IT guys. And so we've tried to figure out some ways to work it through some other systems that we have. And it just hasn't been successful. And so in the meantime, we just have to be more diligent and make sure that the paperwork follows, and it's in Shannon's responsibilities, and he knows it. And
So then what would be the lockstep until you get a cloud-based system? That's what I'm asking.
so it's just, people have to do their job. Right? I mean, we just have to, when a foreman's moving, it needs to, Shannon needs to find out, he's got to get it back out to the new foreman, or it's got to be transitioned.
That was tough too, because that's relying on a provably fallible system.
So am I to understand, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that you had a meeting with your staff to ensure that this would not happen in the future?
It is, Shannon is responsible to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future.
And is that documented?
Probably not.
Okay.
Shannon
Sorry.
knows it. You can ask Shannon.
Yeah,
He has that expectation.
Shannon, is that your first name or your last? Would you please come up? And your last name, please?
Kelly,
Spell that, please.
Kelly.
So my first question would be, how often does this happen to you guys? Is this a normal thing, or is this just out of the norm?
Honest, it was, I could kind of explain the situation of apartment switching. And so what I did to be proactive about it, because there was a multiple apartment switch, so it wasn't a consistent thing until we found a consistent apartment. So what I did was I took the book so it wouldn't go to Elko or, you know, out east far where we couldn't get the books back. So I took it in the office and I was doing the daily logs, and I was driving out there daily to ensure that we were in compliance. So I had the binder with me at the office. It just wasn't on site. And when we did receive the email about the violation, I either emailed Candace Brown, I think she's the one violation. I emailed her all the logs and the permit. So to show them that we were keeping up, even though it wasn't on site or immediately on site. And then I met her at the site and showed her the whole book of all the logs and the permit being kept up with. It was just an unfortunate situation.
So would it be prudent would it be possible, I guess, I don't know, I'm just throwing something out there, like, do you guys have a lockbox or something that you could keep on site, that something like that could be kept in? That wouldn't, I mean, vandalism and all of that stuff, I get it.
A lot of times that is, a lot of jobs have we have like annexes,
Yeah,
and so that would be a standard, yes. This was a job without a Connex.
nothing smaller to facilitate this?
Yeah, you know, I mean, we can jump from $3,000 to 65 million, so there's no single answer that's
Yeah.
the right answer. The gold barrel.
Just a crappy situation.
We have to do better. It's,
I get you.
Mr. Ristori, as part of this discussion, I would ask, and I ask council, please to step in here. My question is, what was the fine for the dust emissions?
So, violation of.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Mr. Fisher, Mr. Kelly, thank you very much.
Again, for the record, Josh Ristori, a supervisor of permitting compliance with the Air Quality Management Division. Your question in regards to what the fine was for the dust control violation?
Yes,
It is considered again, a minor violation per District Board of Health Regulations, section 020. Therefore, it was at $1,000. The violation for the lack of the dust control permit, again, was a $1,000 fine. So that's what those were set at.
all right. Thank you, sir.
$1,000 each?
$1,000 each, correct?
Each.
Separate violations.
Okay.
All right, I will bring it into the board for discussion. And Ms. Downs, gentlemen, do you know, what comments would you like to offer, remembering that we have three choices here: to uphold the violation with $1,000 fine, to dismiss the violation, or to uphold the violation with a lesser amount of fine. So, comments, please.
My first thought on this would be for the dust, to keep the fine as it is. For the paperwork, I would literally say just get it together. I completely understand the problem on the logistics of this, but you guys are, like you said, an incredibly functional company that can come up with a working formula for this.
Okay, did I hear a comment from,
You know, is it too late to ask a question?
oh, no,
Where is the permit today?
Permit is currently on the Flying J site.
Okay.
The reason why it wasn't on the site at the time was just because we were switching foreman, so until we got that set foreman that was gonna be on that job, you know, that's why I kept it in the office, just so it wasn't out east or somewhere far where it wasn't easily accessible. In the office, I'm 10 minutes away, so, you know, I'm able to go out there and do inspections and see the site, and, you know, upon request, even immediate request, I just like that. So that's the reason.
other questions or comments? All right. Well, I've outlined our choices: uphold with the $1,000 fine, dismiss the violation, or uphold the fine with a lesser amount. Does any one member of the board have a motion?
I would move for the $1,000 fine for the dust.
Excuse me, Mr. Burr, could you say that again, please?
Said I would move for the $1,000 fine for the particulates.
Right, but I think that's not been appealed. So, what we have
Okay.
here, Lee,
You're right.
is the failure to have the permit on site, and the next one is failure to have the logbook on site. And unless I overstep my bounds, I would suggest that we consider them together. They're, oh, geez. All right.
I haven't shut off.
Time for dancing later. Is it two separate fines?
They are two separate fines, and I would prefer to present on the second violation.
All
If I
right.
may, I will definitely expedite
Sure.
that presentation.
Okay,
If you want to make a decision on both of them together.
Yes, please.
all right, thank you.
It have to be something that you amend the.
So agenda items can be combined under open meeting law. So if he wants to present on both items, and then if you guys want to do separate motions on each individual items or do a combined motion, both ways are acceptable.
Mr. Ristori, I think we've heard everything we need
Okay,
on the second item as well as the first.
okay.
So I would suggest that our board take action on number one, failure to maintain a permit, and then number two, failure to maintain a logbook as two separate items, but as part of our overall consideration. Would
Understood.
that be acceptable to you?
Absolutely. If that's the way that you want to move forward, absolutely.
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. Members of the board.
I have one more question. How often does this happen? This is not a normal thing for you guys, right? And you got it fixed?
This site is unique.
Okay,
So I have one more. You had the permit, but it wasn't on site. Did I get that correctly? And you were 10 minutes away is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. Okay.
I don't know if I need to officially recuse myself from 11 as well, since it's a separate agenda item for the same reasons as from number 10.
If you just want to put it on the record, we can say that you're recusing yourself from both items 10 and 11.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
I guess the last thing I would want to say is you can't be 10 minutes away from every single site would be the big problem. Just-
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I understand there's a big responsibility, but, like Jeff said, I take that on. I drive out to sites daily, make sure that they're keeping up with their SWIP, their dust. And in this particular moment, I was going to be responsible for making sure that we were, in charge of the dust control logs, for the permit, so.
Okay, so it was a personnel thing, and you're saying you were personally responsible for this, so the bus runs over you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in my personal, yeah,
No, I have in my mind, there's somewhat a distinction, and I might want to get Mr. Ristori's input on it. I see the permit is more of a static, it's been issued, it's got a timeline, it's somewhat a document that doesn't really change, serves as a guide for what we're doing. The permitting logs seem to me to be a living document. Those need to be updated every time the water truck goes out, all of that type of thing, so that I see the permit maybe as being clerical. The log to me seems to be
more tangible.
far more important in terms of the quality and keeping it up to ensure that we're going to comply with the permit.
So right back to a form of on-site storage system, no matter the size.
Or just, I just like to know what the quality of the log was when we saw it, and how was it being maintained off-site with nobody really, no foreman or somebody in control on-site to ensure that this wasn't a one-off type of problem. Whereas I see the permit as being something that, okay, that's up on the shelf and maybe isn't as big a deal as that living document, that log that should be updated several times a day, I'm assuming, when the wind is blowing.
What's your comment on that, Mr. Ristori?
Well, if I may, I'd like to show you a copy of the dust log, which I do believe came in your packet. Can you? Because I totally agree with Mr. Schweber's comment that this is, again, a guide to staying in compliance. If you look at the different criteria on this document, you have elimination of track on existing roads, condition of the gravel access roadway, control of dust from trenching operations, condition of crust on disturbed areas. Right there, you could see in the video, you only need 10 seconds of it to see that that should have been marked and notified, hey, we should probably do something about this. Condition of crust on excavated materials. Condition of crust on stockpiles. Control of dust from the screening operations. Control of dust from backfilling operations. Number of operating water trucks and pools. The size of operating water trucks and pools. So again, if someone were to identify, there was a water truck there, but it looked like it was supporting the crushing and screening operation, not one for the equipment driving around. So I 100% agree with the statement that this is a living document, and it should be noted if you're out of compliance as the operator. And then what would you do to get back into compliance?
Okay.
We often go out to sites and we see these completely marked NA or no issue, no issue. We live in such an arid environment. It's very unlikely that you're not gonna have an issue in one of these areas.
So then that brings up the question, who's responsible for this on a daily basis at the site if they're 10 minutes away?
And it goes back to Mr. Kaplan's concern about the video and one small portion of it. If you have someone coming out to a site to complete this form and then driving away, they're not there visualizing it during the full operation. So the form cannot effectively be utilized in that manner. And that is the purpose of the record keeping.
Understood.
All right. Seems to me that we have
Beat this down.
identified two separate things of different consequence. Excuse me. One being the failure to have the permit on site, which in my opinion is somewhat minor violation. And then is brought to our attention by Mr. Schweber, a much more significant violation of failure to maintain the dust control log hour by hour if needs be on site.
I think Mr. Kelly has a.
Oh, Mr. Kelly, please go ahead.
This is my first time, so I'm very scared for this. In our logbook, and I'm not sure if they did get the email or if we met on site, but it does show in our records that on that date, we were in compliance, and up until that date, we were in compliance. And when I do these inspections, I'm out the office majority of the day going from site to site to site. So it's not one of those things where I drive by at startup time at 7 in the morning and then I leave and never go back to the site again. I'm constantly driving through many of the operations that we have to make sure that we're in compliance with dust control logs and slip. And in this particular situation, I was driving by day in and day out, and at this particular time, I wasn't at the site.
Okay.
You're just driving around to check the logs are being filled out.
Well, because the logbook was with me, and the book with the permit and the logbook were with me in the office, that's the reason why it wasn't on site for a foreman to fill it out.
But if you're not on site, how do you fill it out accurately?
Go by 3 times a day, just to see what the operation is like, or I come back with a, just like a generic statement.
I got
I want to be thorough.
All right. So 2 items for consideration. Case 1325 regarding the failure to have a dust control permit on site, and violation 0050. Mr. Ristori, what case is that?
Case number
1321.
1321. And there's 2 violations, AQMV 21-0049 for the dust control permit
Right.
violation. AQMV 21-0050 for the dust control logs violation.
All right. Members of the board, with regard to item number 1, failure to maintain a dust control permit on site, May I have a motion regarding your thoughts on this matter?
I would like to motion that we uphold the violation with no fine.
Do I hear a second?
On this one, I second.
Okay, motion made, motion seconded, that we uphold the violation with a fine of $0. Any discussion? May I hear those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, that's right. So we have a vote of 3-2 in favor of upholding the violation with 0 fine. It is so decided. Secondly, case number 1321 relating to failure to have a dust control logbook on site. Do I hear a motion with regard to that violation?
I would move that we uphold the fine on this particular part of this.
Okay, the motion is to uphold the notice of violation with a fine of $1,000. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Is there any objection? Please say nay. That motion is upheld. Violation in case number 1321. The notice upheld, the fine $1,000. Is there any additional comment? Mr. Bean, Mr. Kelly, thank you very much. Q&D is an excellent contractor in our area. I knew Norm Deanda for decades, and so please figure out a way of getting it together. Yes, please. Thank you.
The appellant doesn't. This is a recommending body only. The recommendation from the board will go to the board of health for the final determination.
Yes, you may appeal further should you wish to do so. All right. Our next to last item, we solicit any comment from the board members of topics for future agendas. Any comment on item number 12? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 13, public comment. Any member of the public is invited to speak on or off the agenda during this period. Do I have any offer of comment from members of the public? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I second.
I first and you second. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our hearing is adjourned. Thank you very much for everyone's attendance this evening. And I appreciate the comments of the board members reflecting their experience. So, done.
It was getting painful to keep sitting down.
Okay. Hey, Lee. Appreciate your practical comments. Thank you very much. Oh, I hope you'll sit next to me because you have a real good sense of what is